Hello, class. This is Stephen Quigley, your composing digital media instructor. Today, we are going to get a preview of Adobe Lightroom Classic. Now, this is a little different from the online version of Lightroom. Adobe Lightroom Classic is designed for photographers who have come to love this program for its quick control over various photographs that you might take for a project, ability to organize them and share them with clients. So super important software for professional photographers. What you see here are my photos in my library, and I've got the ability right now to go through and decide how I want to rank them. Okay. These rankings will show up later on. It'll help me kind of figure out what I want to present to my possible clients. If it's a dud, it's a dud. First thing I'm going to show you, once we move out of this library mode, is our development mode. I love the development mode. This is where you go to unconceal the essence of the photograph, what it wants to be. Now you'll see lots of different tools over here on the right side. This is our tools panel all the way up and down. We're not going to learn all of these tools here, but I'm going to show you some of the tools that a lot of pros use. So right off the bat, one of the things that a photographer will do is pick this exposure tool. And if you see over here on the left-hand side, this is what I'm creating in terms of my exposure. When I manipulate the tool, when I move it over the top, you'll see that left-hand box is changing colors. So what I'm doing right now is I'm providing the contrast for my colors. So what I want to do is try to find a place that shows off that best contrast. It used to be that you'd set your exposure in your camera before you ever took your picture. In some cases, you could manipulate this a little bit in post, in production in the darkroom. But this is allowing me to try to figure out what these colors need to look like. Okay? So if I don't want to do that, or maybe I don't even have a good eye for this, right? You haven't developed your eye for this sort of thing, you can just slide on down to this button that says auto, and I'm going to push this and watch what happens to my photo. 1, 2, 3. Magic. So the algorithm will decide what sort of color balance needs to happen in this image. Okay, so if you don't like that, you can default to the dropper tool, but for the most part, Adobe's pretty spot on with this, and you can further manipulate that exposure just a little bit here with the slider. So let's talk about some of these other tools. We were talking about the rules of thirds, right? Bam! Photographers are always thinking in terms of rules of thirds. In this case, I think I'm going to violate the rule of third. But you can see how different images lend themselves to the rule of third, and I can crop my image to find those spaces, right? Under aspects, as it was shot, the original, or we can have some other quick defaults, okay? We've got some standard print sizing, and we also have some popular sizing for different applications on the web. Alright, so super easy ways to quickly format your picture. Okay, so moving on here, let's talk about some of these tools. I'm going to move on to this tool right here, spot removal tool. Okay, so this is good. It's called the spot removal tool. In some circles, it's called the boyfriend removal tool. So let's say we've got this just unwanted boyfriend, this weed over here on the side, and we're just gonna color right over this puppy, and let's see what happens. Woof! Goodbye! Gonna wash that boy right out of my hair. Gonna wash that boy right out of my hair. Pretty amazing, right? So really quick remedy for those unwanted boyfriends. So we've got another tool here. This is the red eye correction, and depending on how late you were out running around with your friends, this might be a really handy tool to bring some more sobriety to your photos. Okay, this next tool, these next three are big winners, especially when we're trying to create a little bit of create an impression in our photographs. First one's going to be this gradient tool, and we'll see what I can do here. Okay, when I use this tool, I can angle it as I want, and I can have control over a designated area. In this case, my saturation. Okay, I could oversaturate it, or I could remove it. I could kind of make it black and white. Alright, so that's one thing I can do. If I don't want to mess with that, I can mess with other things. I can mess with the color in this area, the exposure maybe, if I wanted to, for some reason. Okay, so I'm gonna hit done. I'm gonna hit previous and default back to the original here. Okay, our boyfriends are back. Boyfriend's back in town. Anyways, let's move on to this tool right here. This is the radial filter. This is also kind of a cool tool. You can see, maybe you've seen images like this, especially black and white photos from back in the day that people will add color to, or vice versa. Create an old-timey effect. Or maybe here there's some sort of Zen power of this rock, I don't know. And then everything else is obsolete. I'm not sure. But this allows me again to kind of control whatever's happening in this area here. Now if I want to reverse that, I can as well. All I need to do is go down to this invert button, and I can invert it. I can also control the feathering. Okay, if I want that to be a very, a frontier, a border, I can do that. If I want to feather it, I can also feather it. Okay, so you have control over that sort of feature. This is my brush filter. Okay, so this allows me to come in here and I can draw what I want to color. Okay, and I'm just going to use this affected area here. Okay, whatever that affected area here is, and I can create some pretty cool effects here. So now I'm messing with my exposure. I can bring up my saturation if I want, just in that particular area, and I'm not necessarily affecting the rocks. Okay, next I'd like to talk a little bit about some of these other features here. We've got our exposure, what we've been talking about, how much light we want into the picture, and also the contrast between blacks and whites. We also have some highlights and shadows. You can play around with those to see what they do in terms of your background and some of the features, some of the details, whites and blacks as well. We can talk about clarity and dehazing and whether or not we want to create texture or not. And the final thing we've been talking about here is saturation, pulling those colors out or pushing them back into the photograph. So those are the basic elements that I'd like you to play around with to try to find the essence, to discover the essence of your images. Maybe you're going to create a motif or repeating theme through your photographs. Maybe you've got your own signature that you want to develop in these images. But the point of this right now is to play with 10 or so images and have some fun with it. And use this tool to learn, right? To learn about colors, start seeing what all these different things do and what they might mean in your photograph. It's also super important that you're watching videos of people working in Lightroom to see what they're doing in Lightroom and what they think is good, and learning a little bit more about this program. So what are we creating? We're creating a slideshow PDF. I'm just gonna go to that now. This is your slideshow. You've got some control over what you want that slideshow to look like, but inevitably we're going to just hit this button right here, export PDF, and it's going to create a PDF for us so that our user can see these different photographs. But that's the basics of Adobe Lightroom Classic. We're going to be working in this program again for our next assignment, and let's get to know it. I can't wait to see what you make.